Well, everyone, I lost a bet, so I have to. Canada defeats the United States in the Four Nations Faceoff Championship on Thursday night. Connor McDavid with the game-winning overtime goal, giving people flashbacks to Sidney Crosby in 2010. We're about to hop into that game and more on Mozarsky Memos. Let's get into it. Yeah, so here we go. I thought about doing a whiteboard, but we are not going to go into that. Canada defeats the United States in the Four Nations Face-Off Championship Thursday night at TD Garden. 3-2 Canada. They take home the inaugural Four Nations. Connor McDavid, best player of the generation, multiple-time Hart Trophy winner. Everybody knows what he is. Scores the overtime winner just over 8 minutes in. Finds himself alone in the slot. Puts it past Connor Hellebuck's left shoulder. Canada wins. So yeah, just talking about the game, everything about hockey in this game, good, great, amazing. These players took the Four Nations face-off so seriously, and I think they even exceeded expectations on what the Four Nations face-off was supposed to be, right? You talk about the other four major leagues and their All-Star games. The NHL did the Four Nations face-off in replacement of the All-Star game, and playing for your country means something different, and that's coming from an American wearing a Canada sweatshirt. These players cared. An example, Matthew Tkachuk put his life on the line. Now he's missing some regular season games. These players want to play for the name on their front more than they want to play on the name on their back. So amazing. What a win for hockey. So there are a few things to talk about in this game and why the Canadians won. And I put it out on a TikTok during the weekend, but number one is goaltending because no matter who you talk to in the hockey world, the biggest advantage the U.S. had going into this tournament was goaltending, right? The U.S. had the advantage in goaltending over every team. They have Connor Hellebuck, won the Vezina Trophy last year, well on his way to win it this year. He's top in the league in goals against average. He's top in the league in saves percentage. He's an absolute monster. He's top in the league in wins too because the Winnipeg Jets are having an incredible season. No matter who it was. For Canada, Jordan Binnington. For Sweden, Samuel Ersson, or even Jacobs Markstrom if he was healthy. For Finland, Jussi Saros or Kevin Lankinen. The U.S. had the advantage. But in the Four Nations Face-Off Championship against Canada, Jordan Binnington was incredible. 31 saves on 33 shots. He had so many big ones as the night went on. Had one on Austin Matthews from point blank range in overtime. That's Austin Matthews, the best, one of the best scorers of this generation. He had 69 goals last season, and Binnington made that save and a few more. And he kept the Canadians in the game because during overtime, a lot of it, Canada looked on their heels. And that's when they counted on Binnington to make the big saves. And then Canada relies on their best player, McDavid, finds himself alone in the slot after being invisible for a lot of the game. And what do? They put it away. Canada storms into the U.S. and wins. But the thing I'll say about Jordan Binnington, no matter what you think about him, he might not be an elite goaltender, but he is a big game player. At 26 years old or whatever he is, has a Stanley Cup ring, has won a game seven, two game sevens in 2019. He beat the Dallas Stars in the second round 2-1 in overtime, then beat the Boston Bruins. And Binnington stood on his head in the first period at TD Garden in 2019. And then the Blues went on their rampage and won the Stanley Cup in his rookie season. Then a few years later, you see it. Jordan Binnington was great. He made the big saves. Hellebuck made some really good saves too. But what mattered in the end was Binnington made one more. That's advantage number one. Advantage number two, Canadians have experience. And look, the U.S. is a very talented team, right? They have stars. Austin Matthews, Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, the Tkachuk brothers. But the biggest difference between this Canadian and American roster is the fact that their players have Stanley Cup rings. Look at the teams the Canadians put on the ice for the Four Nations Face-Off Championship. 13 out of 18 skaters, 15 out of 20 players, if you include Binnington and backup goaltender Adin Hill, they have Stanley Cup rings. The U.S. only have three players that have it: Jake Guentzel, Matthew Tkachuk, and Jack Eichel. Experience matters. Sidney Crosby, I said it on my last preview, only lost one game in best on best hockey in his entire career. You think he was going to lose to the U.S. twice in a week? Experience matters, especially once you get to overtime when teams are afraid to make mistakes. And then what do you see? You see Connor McDavid, like I said, the best player of the generation, find himself alone in the slot. Is that because the U.S. isn't an experienced team? No, because they have a lot of guys that have played playoff games. But if you look at the raw numbers and the score sheet, the biggest difference, look, the 3 goals even, right? Nathan MacKinnon opens the game. He won the Cup in 2022. Sam Bennett, when the Canadians go down 2-1, ties the game. He won the Stanley Cup last year, and then it's Connor McDavid in overtime. For the U.S., they're two scorers, Brady Tkachuk and Jake Sanderson. They're 25 and 22 respectively, and neither have played a playoff game in their career. And that's one of the biggest things that you could maybe get mad at the Americans for is a lot of their more experienced players sort of disappeared in this game, right? Matthews didn't have a great tournament, but I did think he was really good on Thursday. He just couldn't get that final piece of scoring. Jack Hughes criticism, right? Chris Kreider, Vincent Trocheck, JT Miller maybe. Brock Nelson was on the ice in overtime, and he was a major reason why. And so Canada's experienced players, and I said this last time on Mozarsky Memos, they came up huge. Their top six came up huge. And all these guys with experience, Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, Sidney Crosby, Mark Stone, Braden Point. These guys have won Stanley Cups. These guys have been to the mountaintop in the NHL, and it mattered, and you saw it there. But last thing, such a win for U.S. hockey and hockey in general. Like I mentioned, so many people watched it. The U.S. will be a contender in the Olympics. I'm stating the obvious. They have so many superstars, and if you look at what the U.S. offers, top scorer in Austin Matthews, a bunch of guys like the Tkachuk brothers, Hughes, Eichel, JT Miller, Adam Fox, Charlie McAvoy. They have the best goalie in the game in Hellebuck. U.S. hockey's on the up, and it's in a really good position. So I really want to preface that. But Canada, they won that game through making up for the goaltending deficit. Jordan Binnington, you were incredible. Relying on their experience, their 13 skaters that have been in the big games, or let me rephrase, been to the Stanley Cup and won it compared to the US's three, and that made a difference. And they responded. And props to Canada, they won it. US will see them soon, but for now, I'm wearing that sweatshirt. Now hopping back to the NHL, specifically the New York Islanders and the New York Rangers. Both teams are outside looking in right now in the NHL playoff race, and both have had some games already. I'm recording this on Monday afternoon, so hopefully it'll get out before this game Tuesday. It will get out. The Rangers and Islanders play at UBS Arena on Tuesday night. Looking at the standings right now, the Rangers are 2 points out of the second Eastern Conference wildcard spot held by the Ottawa Senators. The Islanders not so far behind. They have 57 points. So let's hop into both these teams and why they can and can't make the playoffs. Let's start with the New York Islanders. And to be fair with the New York Islanders, I'm going to start with the negatives because this team has a very limited ceiling to me, and not only me, but a lot of people in the hockey world. I think the number one thing you have to look at with the New York Islanders right now, and this isn't only a this year thing, it's been going on for a lot of years. Their special teams are putrid, they're poor, they're bad. They're 32nd in the league in power play and penalty kill right now. When the Islanders go on the man advantage or give up a penalty, the other team scores a power play goal or the Islanders don't convert. I've been saying this for the Rangers forever because the Rangers have a special teams model that has defied every NFL statistic for a while. NHL, my bad, guys. Special teams win games, especially in the playoffs. And the New York Islanders, their special teams are not good enough for them to win playoff games or even stay in a playoff race. You see this right now. They've lost 4 out of 5 games. Yesterday, they go 2-2 against the Dallas Stars, and what does Dallas do? They score 2 power play goals by the same guy, Jason Robertson, in a span of 4 minutes. Then the Islanders are fighting from behind. This isn't the only time that the Islanders have had to fight from behind because they've given up goals on the power play, right? Look at the game against Minnesota before the Dallas game. They gave up a power play goal in that. The Islanders' power play and penalty kill is not good. And that is not a recipe for success in the playoffs or even to make the playoffs. Because when you look around the New York Islanders and you look at other teams competing with them for that position, right? Rangers, better power play. Bruins, better power play. Blue Jackets, better power play. Senators, better power play. It matters and special teams matter. Yes, even strength is huge, obviously, but this model of having really, really, really bad special teams, it's not going to get you places, and it's surely not going to get the New York Islanders places. One more thing with the New York Islanders is that lack of a superstar, right? Matt Barzal's been hurt. Ever since his rookie year, he's been on the down. And so, besides that, the New York Islanders don't have a point per game scorer. Their leading scorer this season is Anders Lee and Bo Horvat. They're tied with 41 points. Right behind them is Kyle Palmieri, Brock Nelson. Simon Holmstrom has 30. He's the younger guy. When looking at this Islanders core, they're older, they're limited, and they don't score as much as a lot of the major cores in the league. So even if the Islanders sneak in, and you see this every year with them in the playoffs, it becomes a my guy versus your guy thing, and the Islanders roster isn't as talented as the Washington Capitals, as the Carolina Hurricanes, as the New Jersey Devils, as any team in the Atlantic. I'd even say the Rangers roster is more talented. I know I'm a Rangers fan, but the Islanders don't have an Artemi Panarin. The Islanders don't have an Igor Shesterkin. They don't have an Adam Fox. A lot of these guys have won awards and have been in consideration. It's hard to say that with the Islanders because they haven't won an award since Matt Barzal has been there. And then you look at these guys like Lee, Horvat, Palmieri. These are guys over 30 years old, maybe in the prime of their career, but probably more towards the end, and you take a lot of cores over them. But with the Islanders, the biggest reason they can make the playoffs, and it's the same with the Rangers, it's their goaltending. Ilya Sorokin is a good goalie. He's having a pretty good year. He has 20 wins, three shutouts, a goals against average under three. It's at 2.72 right now, and a save percentage over 900. But Sorokin has bad games, right? His past two games against Minnesota and Dallas, he gave up 5 and 4 goals, and they're both losses. You see this with Igor Shesterkin too. I'll talk about this in a minute. Shesterkin is 2-4 or 2-5 in his last seven, has a goals against average over four and a save percentage under 900. That's not good, but at the same time, we know how talented these guys are. That's why Ilya Sorokin signed the mega extension to keep him in New York for $8 million or whatever he made. Ilya Sorokin's one of the few goalies in the league that I truly believe can win you a hockey game or steal you a hockey game, and he's done that as shutouts. The Islanders are not an offensive team. They've never been an offensive team, especially under Patrick Roy, where you expected them to score. And that's a major reason they went on this 6-7 game winning streak in January. But at the same time, you can't expect them to score 3 or 4 goals a game. This is where Sorokin comes in because Sorokin's able to make the saves and keep the Islanders in these dogfights. A lot of times that's when you take the core of Lee, Horvat, Palmieri, anyone else you throw out there because the Islanders are a physical team. That's the biggest advantage. And if the Islanders are able to, one, put their offensive output from here to around here and score 3-4 goals a game like they were in January, combined with the goaltending, then they have a legitimate chance at the playoffs. And then there's the Rangers, who stand 3 points above the Islanders in the playoffs right now. They're 2 points out of the standings. That could change with a win tomorrow combined with a Columbus loss and an Ottawa loss to Winnipeg on Wednesday. The Rangers are officially in playoff position. But after this weekend, it is very hard for Rangers fans, Rangers journalists, the Rangers community to feel satisfied. The Rangers got shellacked this weekend. Shellacked. Started with losing to the worst team in the East in the Buffalo Sabres 8-2, where they gave up 5 goals in the first period. Igor Shesterkin was bad. The team was lazy. There is no excuse for that. Then they flipped the page, right? The Rangers were clearly upset. They had a team meeting against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Yeah, they won that game 5-3. New York was the significantly worse team. It took them until, Jesus, I want to say 4 minutes left in the second period to get a shot that period. Pittsburgh killed them, and that's where Igor Shesterkin's brilliance came in. Right now, the Rangers do not have the look of a Stanley Cup contender, and now I'm admitting it. I said that the Rangers could win the cup. Right now, they can't. They look really, really bad. And this is after 2 weeks. I understand they're dealing with a lot of injuries, right? Shesterkin was placed on the IR during the Four Nations break. He comes back. Artemi Panarin's been dealing with an injury. Vincent Trocheck's playing with a broken thumb. JT Miller, Chris Kreider, Adam Fox all had long stints with the American national team. They all played in the finals. These guys are exhausted. But the Rangers do not look good, and they're getting outplayed by bad teams, which is not good because when the Rangers went on their 10-game point streak to open up January, they were outplaying teams. They weren't only outplaying teams, they were beating them to the punch at almost everything, and they were breaking these trends, right? They've gotten comeback wins. They've beaten Boston, Vegas, Utah. Last night against Pittsburgh, last afternoon, excuse me. They have been breaking these trends, and they started to respond and embody what the New York Rangers were last year when they won the President's Trophy. They killed teams. They killed the Senators. They killed the Flyers, other contenders. The Rangers, though, in their past 5 games, if you include the Pittsburgh game and the Columbus game and the Boston game before the trip, Boston at Boston, not at home, and you include these 2 games right after against inferior teams, the Rangers are getting outplayed. And so, as a fan and someone that covers a team, it is very, 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 very hard to believe in them, especially to win a playoff game or a playoff series, because teams like Washington, Carolina, New Jersey, they all caught up to New York, and their flaws are so apparent. But at the same time, just like the Islanders and the Rangers even more, Igor Shesterkin is in net, so the Rangers have a chance to win any game, especially when you get in the playoffs. Shesterkin went over 30 games, allowing 3 or less goals in the playoffs. Everybody knows what he brings. That's why he's the highest paid goaltender in the NHL. Shesterkin has not been good this season. I'm not going to deny it. There's been stretches where he's been bad. There's been stretches where he has not been able to make the saves like normal. He's still one of the best goaltenders in the league, especially if you get into the postseason. I'm going to go back to 2 years ago when Adam Fox said to reporters, in the playoffs, you just need to get in. This is true for the New York Rangers because they're so talented as a roster. You have guys in the top 6 over 100 points a year. Artemi Panarin and JT Miller. You have stars. Even if they're not performing well, Mika Zibanejad's been there. Alexi Lafreniere had a great postseason last year. He had 8 goals. Chris Kreider's the Rangers' all-time leading power play goal scorer, scored a natural hat trick last year in the third period. There are only 2 other players to do that in Rangers history: Mark Messier and Wayne Gretzky. The Rangers have the pieces, but right now they're not playing as a team. And then they have the guy in the backstop in Igor Shesterkin, where the Rangers could go really, really, really long stretches of being outplayed. It doesn't matter if you have 31 in net if he's making the saves, but he has to make the saves, right? 2-5 in his last 7, goals against average over 4. That's not good enough. But I will preface over and over and over again, as long as the Rangers are in this, they have the goaltending advantage over anyone in the league right now, except maybe Winnipeg and maybe Tampa Bay. And you look at these other teams competing for playoff spots. Columbus, 2 points ahead. The Rangers beat the Blue Jackets the last 2 times it's played. Shesterkin's better than Elvis Merzlikins. Shesterkin's better than Jeremy Swayman of the Boston Bruins. He's better than Sorokin. He's better than whoever the Senators or Red Wings have to offer. And this is why if the Rangers get in, they get a chance. I understand Igor Shesterkin's not playing well. Do I think he's overpaid? Maybe a little, but you have to. But he has a track record of being so incredible in the playoffs, and that makes a difference, especially down the stretch. One more thing I'll say with the New York Rangers. Their core needs a major shakeup. And they did this major shakeup, getting JT Miller. JT Miller's here until 2030. He has 8 points in 7 games as a Ranger. He had 2 multi-goal games. Yesterday against Pittsburgh, one was an empty netter. Doesn't matter. He brings so much, and he's willing to bring so many people into the battle, and the Rangers have been missing that. And now you have that, and it's a major shakeup. Get to this offseason, see what happens. There's going to be a lot of guys on expiring contracts or possible trade candidates. Kreider, Zibanejad, maybe even Artemi Panarin. Build around JT Miller, Vincent Trocheck, Alexi Lafreniere. These pieces are there. The Rangers have a larger window than people think, and I want to preface that. I sound really optimistic about the Rangers, but in full honesty, they are not a Stanley Cup contender right now. And this weekend showed that they got outplayed by 2 very bad teams. Yeah, they escaped Pittsburgh with a win. And look, people could say a win is a win. Nobody in the Rangers community feels that because they look really bad. And unless they're able to wake up down the stretch, it's not going to look good. And I understand just getting in, they might get wiped the floor if they play a Washington, a Carolina, a Florida, because this is where the Rangers' flaws become apparent against good teams, and relying on Shesterkin over and over again, it's not sufficient. Right now, the Rangers barely look like a playoff team, and that needs to change really fast. And last hockey note, Rangers Islanders on Tuesday night at UBS Arena, first of 3 matchups. People are going to overreact to this game. With the Islanders, if they lose, it's going to be they lost 5 out of 6. They aren't scoring. Their goaltending's not good. If the Rangers lose, outplayed by 3 teams that are worse than them, combined players aren't playing well, not giving effort. If the players don't care, why should the fans? It's a regular season game. Every point's going to matter, but at the same time, it's got to be an inch-by-inch formula with them. So we'll see what happens in Rangers Islanders tomorrow. I do expect both teams to come out with so much urgency, and I expect not necessarily a barn burner because I do think Shesterkin and Sorokin are both looking to bounce back and make the saves. It's going to be a good one for sure, and it's obviously a heated rivalry. And last, I'm a college basketball junkie, and New York is college basketball. It's St. John's. The St. John's Red Stormer, 24-4. They picked up their first regular season sweep of UConn since, gosh knows, I think 2000, beating them 89-75 at Madison Square Garden on Sunday afternoon. St. John's has 15 Big East wins. They are in first place in the Big East. It matches their highest total of conference wins this century, going back to pretty much 1985 when they did it. St. John's is a national championship contender. The record speaks for itself. Look at their 4 losses. They lost to Baylor by 1, Georgia by 3, Creighton by 1, and they lost to Villanova by 2. St. John's doesn't get blown out, and they're always in games. And they blow the crap out of teams. They are really good. They blew out UConn. They blew the doors off of Creighton before Creighton came back. Same with Marquette. And St. John's is an experienced team, and they're a team built with so many deep players and a great roster. And you got to give credit to Rick Pitino. This is where the transfer portal becomes important, right? You bring in guys like R.J. Lewis, Kadari Richmond, Zubi Ejiofor. And when you have these players, you have a genuine chance. And speaking of Richmond and Lewis, you might not find a better 1-2 punch in the country. There are a few others that come to mind, right? The Janai Brooms and whoever you want to pair with Auburn, or the Cooper Flags and whoever you want to pair with Duke, because those are both better rosters. St. John's has their highest Big East ranking in recent memory, and they are a really good team. And the other thing that stands out about the Red Storm is they have so many ways to score, whether it is Lewis or Richmond or Ejiofor, whether it's Davion Smith, Aaron Scott, whether it's Simeon Wilcher, who's their best shooter, who's shooting around, he's not shooting that well behind the arc, but his field goal percentage is up over 40. And that's the other thing. You look at all these options St. John's has, they all have field goal percentages over 40. The Red Storm are really good. And I expect them to break their Big East win record. They're going to beat Butler. They're going to beat Seton Hall. Playing Marquette at Marquette, they might lose that game, but they'll have the one seed on lock. They're going to clinch a share of the Big East. They're a really good team. And I do genuinely think they could beat anyone because they have an experienced coach in Rick Pitino who's won it all before, won it with Louisville, knows what he brings. They have star players like Lewis, like Richmond, like Ejiofor, like Smith has big games. They have that, and they have the grit and determination, and it's just so fun watching them. So I wanted to put that out there because I'll get more college basketball content on the way. St. John's genuinely has a chance to win it all. They're running through the Big East right now, and it's really fun to watch. And that will conclude episode 31 of Mozarsky Memo. So I'll have another one later in the week. But as always, thank you so much for listening. I know I ran through this one really fast today, getting this out before Rangers Islanders on Tuesday night. St. John's keeps running through. On the later episode of Mozarsky Memos, we'll talk a little football. We'll talk about the Mets injuries starting to pile up. And we'll talk about the Yankees changes that are coming and obviously review Rangers Islanders. So please like and subscribe and tell your friends.